Hey there, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into something kind of fascinating, personality types in love. Specifically, we're going to focus on two types that are pretty different, INFJs and ISTPs. So think of this as your insider's guide to how these two very different personalities, experience love and relationships.
Absolutely. We're going to really unpack the core values and behaviors that kind of drive each type in relationships. And we'll explore, both the challenges and the surprising strengths they can bring to a relationship.
Okay, so let's kick things off with INFJs. They're often described as these deep intuitive souls who just crave those deep heart-to-heart connections. Imagine someone who just gets you on an emotional level, someone you can have those long, meaningful conversations with. That's kind of the INFJ vibe, right?
Yeah, totally.
But what's really going on beneath the surface with them?
Well, at their core, INFJs are driven by this deep well of compassion and sensitivity. They genuinely care about their partner's emotional well-being, often prioritizing it even above their own. But they're also deeply romantic. It's not just about any connection for them. They're looking for something authentic, a safe space to share their inner world.
Yeah, it's almost like they have this rich inner garden, and they're searching for that special someone to tend it with them, someone who truly appreciates its beauty and depth.
Exactly, and that's where things get really interesting, because our source material actually points out that this deep desire for connection can sometimes lead INFJs to idealize their partners.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that makes sense. If you're longing for that soulmate-level connection, it's easy to put your partner on a pedestal. But how does that actually play out in a real-world dating scenario?
Well, it can manifest in different ways. For example, an INFJ might overlook red flags early in a relationship because they're so focused on the potential they see in their partner. Or they might have these incredibly high expectations for communication and emotional intimacy that can be tough for anyone to live up to consistently.
Right. It's like this balancing act between cherishing that deep connection while also staying grounded in reality.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that no one is perfect, and that even the most compatible partners are going to have their differences.
So how does an INFJ navigate that tension then? That tension between idealism and reality in a relationship?
It's about finding a partner who appreciates their emotional depth without feeling overwhelmed by it. Someone who understands that grand gestures aren't as important as those quiet moments of shared understanding.
Those moments where you can just be your true selves.
Exactly. And this desire for a deep shared understanding plays a huge role in their overall relationship vision. They're not just looking for a fling. They want to build a future together, a partnership where both people truly feel seen and understood on that deeper level.
It's like they're seeking a companion for a journey of emotional growth and discovery.
Exactly. Now, on the flip side, we have ISTPs. And as our source material points out, they approach relationships in a completely different way.
Right. If INFJs are all about exploring those depths of their feelings, ISTPs are out there navigating the world through action. Less talk, more doing. It's like they're speaking a different language of love, one that revolves around acts of service rather than those heartfelt conversations. So what makes these action-oriented personalities tick in relationships?
You got it. For ISTPs, love isn't about, those grand gestures or pronouncements. It's about showing up, being reliable, taking those concrete actions, like really making their partner's life easier and more enjoyable.
Okay, I gotta say that's pretty awesome. Just imagine coming home to a perfectly organized garage, or your partner's whipping up your favorite meal after a long day. Those actions really do speak volumes.
You really do. And it's important to remember that this practical approach, it doesn't mean that ISTPs don't have deep feelings. They just express them differently, right?
Totally. So it's less about saying I love you a million times a day, and more about, hey, I fixed that leaky faucet you were complaining about, or I planned this amazing weekend getaway because I know you need a break.
Exactly. They're all about problem solving and making things happen in the real world. That's how they show they care.
Yeah, I can see how this difference in expressing affection, it could lead to some really interesting dynamics in a relationship, especially with an INFJ who really thrives on those deep emotional conversations. It's like they're coming at love from completely different planets almost.
It can definitely be a clash of styles, especially early on in a relationship, when you're still getting to know each other. In fact, our source material actually highlighted communication as a potential clash point for these two types.
That makes total sense to me. Imagine an INFJ eager to share their deepest thoughts and feelings, while their ISTP partner is happily changing the oil in the car or reorganizing their tool shed. It's like they're totally missing each other's cues.
That's a great way to put it. And that's exactly how these differences in communication styles can lead to misunderstandings. An INFJ might start to feel like their partner just isn't interested in their inner world, while the ISTP might feel pressured to have all these conversations that they're not quite sure how to navigate.
So how do these two bridge that communication gap then? It seems like it would take a lot of effort from both sides.
It absolutely does. For INFJs, it's about recognizing that their ISTP partner's actions, those actions are their love language. Like fixing that broken cabinet door, it's not just a chore, it's their way of creating a more comfortable and functional home for the two of them.
Right. It's about understanding the loving intention behind the action, even if it doesn't come wrapped in this like heartfelt conversation.
Exactly. And for ISTPs, it's about recognizing that their INFJ partner really needs those verbal expressions of love and emotional intimacy. It's about being truly present during those conversations, even if they don't come naturally. It's about creating that safe space for vulnerability and sharing.
So how do these differences, which seem so challenging on the surface, how do they actually become strengths in a relationship?
That's the real beauty of it. When both partners are fully committed to understanding and appreciating each other's differences, that's when they can really learn and grow from each other in some really profound ways.
It's like they say opposites attract, right? But in this case, it's not just about the initial attraction. It's about how those differences can actually create a stronger, more dynamic bond over time.
Yeah, it's like each of them has a piece of the puzzle that the other one is missing. That is a great way to put it. Imagine like the INFJ with their incredible knack for understanding emotions. They can really help the ISTP tap into their own feelings and, maybe even express them more openly. It's not about like trying to turn the ISTP into this emotional talker overnight. It's more about just creating a safe space for them to sort of explore that side of themselves at their own pace.
And then on the other side, you have the ISTP with their like grounded, action-oriented nature. They can help the INFJ bring some of those, big ideas back down to earth. Like, hey, while you're busy dreaming up our perfect future, I went ahead and booked that couple's cooking class you mentioned. Oh, and I picked up your dry cleaning.
Exactly. It's about finding that balance between dreaming big, but also taking those practical steps to actually make those dreams a reality. And let's not forget about the element of adventure that ISTPs often bring to relationships. They're all about, experiencing life firsthand, trying new things, pushing boundaries.
Which can be so great for INFJs. They might be a little more inclined to stick to their routines and comfort zones, right?
Precisely. The ISTP can be the one to say, hey, let's just ditch the plans and go on a spontaneous road trip this weekend. Or how about we finally sign up for that salsa dancing class you've been talking about?
So they really do challenge each other to grow in new and unexpected ways. But this all sounds like it takes a lot of patience and understanding, especially with how differently they seem to approach communication. Any advice for our listeners out there on how to navigate those differences, especially if they're in an INFJ-ISTP relationship themselves?
Absolutely. I think the first thing to remember is that communication is always a two-way street. It's not just about talking, it's about really actively listening and trying to understand your partner's perspective, even if it's totally different from your own. For INFJs, that might mean like paying attention to those subtle ways their ISTP partner is showing love through their actions, rather than always expecting those big heart-to-heart conversations.
And for ISTPs?
For ISTPs, it's about recognizing that those deep conversations are really important to their INFJ partner. It's about being present, listening with intention, and offering words of affirmation and support, even if it feels a little bit outside your comfort zone sometimes.
Right, it's about meeting each other halfway.
Exactly. And remember, relationships are a journey, not a destination. There will be bumps in the road, misunderstandings, moments of frustration. But if you're both truly committed to understanding and appreciating each other's unique ways of giving and receiving love, those differences, they can actually become the foundation for a truly beautiful and fulfilling partnership.
So well said. As we wrap up this deep dive into INFJ and ISTP love styles, what's the key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I think the most important thing to remember is that love isn't one size fits all. It's about finding someone who celebrates your strengths, understands your quirks, and ultimately encourages you to be the best version of yourself. And sometimes those seemingly opposite personality traits, those are the very things that create that spark, that magnetic pull, that keeps a relationship interesting and fulfilling for years to come.
Beautifully said. It's like they each bring their own unique color to the canvas, and it creates this masterpiece that's even more vibrant and captivating because of those differences. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of personality types and love. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those connections strong.